you bring something up, and it's obesity. And I kind of really want to get into this because I've had the argument with people where it's like, obesity runs in my family.
Nobody runs in your family.
Exactly, right?
Sorry, I had to do it. I'm sorry.
Welcome back to Next Gen Gains. Normally you would see Mike, but today I had to tell Mike, I got this one. I'm here to interview Jeff. I'm going to get into adolescent and young adult health, specifically college, because I'm in college. So Jeff, thank you for being here to answer all of my questions.
Listen, I'm blessed as always. You look a little bit different than Mike, but you know, who better? You know, you have so many good questions and so many things that the younger generation ask. I mean, forever I've, kind of helped the younger generation when I was the younger generation. Now that I've gotten older and, I still help as much as I can. I just feel like there's a lot of the young population, there's so much information out there and there's so many things at your fingertips that you could do that if you do it wrong or you take something wrong, you could create a bigger problem. So
yeah, I like to say that we're currently in what's called the information age, which means there's so much information out there, but a lot of it is just by the random guy on social media, not Jeff Delaney. Yeah. So I have the prime resource right here. And to begin my questioning, I'm in college, which means I'm living pretty cheaply. I'm not living lavishly, but I need to eat good because I definitely feel a difference when I'm eating McDonald's versus when I'm eating Whole Foods. So what are some ways that I can eat cleaner at a cheaper budget? What are some of the substitutes you would do?
So, I always say this, whether you're young and trying to get by or you're trying to lose weight or you're going on a weight loss program, a lot of people think it's cheaper to eat, fast food or things that are, just loaded with crap. But when you break it down, if you were to truly break down someone's diet, and I've done this before at my clinic years ago, just to show like a cost analysis and take someone who's eating, eggs for breakfast and chicken for lunch and steak. It depends on the quality of the steak and the cut you get. But, I broke it down, and a standard American diet on a week to week basis was almost like $30 to like $60 more per week. Cause think about it. Usually when you're buying fast food and you're doing it a couple times, or if you're going out with the buddies, we're not even going to talk about like having drinks or whatever else, but you go out to eat multiple times, one, you don't get satiated. You tend to probably eat more food. So when you break it down, you're going to cost yourself a lot more financially, but also too with your health over time. So it's like, but if you were to just go to Publix or Walmart even, because Walmart's actually pretty cost effective. I mean, you could look at, maybe some of their cuts aren't like the top tier cuts, but you could eat on a budget healthy. You could buy some lean proteins. You don't have to go with, like a leaner ground beef. You could grab eggs are a little expensive, I guess right now, but when you break it down, it's not like you're crushing a carton a day. So, if you were to truly break it down, you're probably going to save money. Cause how much do you spend when you go out to eat? Like when you go to Chick-fil-A,
let's say an average meal is $12 to $15, let's say.
And so think about it. You could buy a pound of lean ground beef for, depending on the cut, $9, $10, $11, give or take. That's going to make you a couple meals right there. Just in your meats, so like you'll have enough meat for the day for one of those meals. And then, I'm going to add some vegetables, or if you want to get more cost effective, like, like rice, you could make rice in a rice cooker if you're trying to add carbohydrates or potatoes. And you'll probably, if you broke it out, you ate 3 times a day, do the math, you could easily, I think people don't want to accept, or they don't want to take the time to cook. They don't, I don't have time. I'm in school, or I have to study, or, everyone makes excuses for what, but I truly challenge you to just kind of put, write what you do in a typical day, write it down, see how much you're spending, and then go to the grocery store and see how many meals you could make for the same money.
That's a really interesting challenge that I'm now going to go set out and do. With that all, I'm one of those people that's like, I don't have enough time. I don't want to cook, this and that. What are a few, like for me, one of the things that I found is rotisserie chicken.
Yeah.
Already cooked. I don't have to think about it. I just have to cut it, throw it in the microwave with some rice, and call it a day. What are some of those like little tips and tricks to like speed cook, basically?
Yeah, so a lot of times I say meal prep. I personally meal prep twice a week just because after about 3 days, I don't want to eat it doesn't taste the same. So usually Sundays and Wednesdays are my meal prep days. You can make, hamburger patties, like lean meat put an egg to make them taste good. You could cook 10 burgers or 20 burgers. You could actually even bake them I don't have time because I'm having to study. You can make those patties and you could bake them in the oven. And now if you're doing 2 patties a day, you got 5 days right there. I think it is just some people want the variety too. So, rice, you could put rice in a rice cooker, hit go, come back, take it out. And you got a meal for 3 days to go, a carbohydrate to put with your protein. So, I just think a lot of people want to pass off the time thing. I'm probably one of the most busy people you ever meet, and I still find time to meal prep. But also that's a conscious choice you have to make if you truly want to be healthier. Because it is easy to pull in Chick-fil-A or pull in McDonald's and go grab the special whatever it is, but you're not going to feel as good. Mental clarity is not going to be good. Your education's not going to be as good. Your body composition. I mean, you're a hard gainer, so that's you could eat a little bit more loose and probably not put on fat. But I think you just start dropping the excuses. It doesn't take that much time. You could always, once again, let's do a time analysis for you for the week. And let's see where you're wasting time and where you could actually kind of dual roll and meal prep and still study or get whatever you want done.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say like the scheduling down, write down your schedule, what you did in a day. Because yesterday, Mike, actually the guy who I'm filling in for today, he told me, start doing it. You'll start to see you have a lot more time than you think you do. And I did it yesterday. I'm like, oh, I waste a lot of time. There's things that like I'm not doing. But you brought something up. I'm a hard gainer. Yep. And you have this trick that I heard and I've started to utilize now, which is put a little oil over your rice, put a little oil over your chicken or whatever to start adding weight. How healthy is that to do? Like, I get it. Like, I probably won't gain the fat from it because I'm a hard gainer. But if you're somebody who does gain fat easier, is that something that you would stay away from?
So, end of the day, whether you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, it's going to come down to calories, right? So if your meals are set, your protein, your carbs, or protein and fats, depending on how you're sequencing your meals, if you feel like you can't eat more food and you are trying to gain weight, adding oil, a tablespoon's 128 calories. I like personally coconut oil or a high quality olive oil. You can even do macadamia nut oil is probably one of my favorites. Put it in your rice. And so a great way to add some calories, add some healthy fats, unsaturated fats that are going to actually do better for you. And not really have to change how much quantity or volume of food that you eat. Now, if you're someone who's trying to lose weight, in a day you could still make that happen. But I was going to, it all depends on how much food are you already eating. You have to set your food in a caloric deficit to lose weight. Mm-hmm. So most likely that person's not going to add oils to start adding calories in, or if they did, they'd have to cut back on some of like the proteins or the carbohydrates, depending on the overall goal. So I always say, like, for someone trying to lose weight, they're probably not going to add a lot of oil unless they're doing more of a ketogenic type diet to where the carbohydrates are going to be relatively lower. Mm-hmm. But don't sacrifice your protein. I always say protein's kind of something that should always kind of be staple in your diet, especially if you're trying to build muscle, lose fat. It does not matter, having your protein requirement. And I'm big into smaller, more frequent meals, minimum breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack, which prevents you from wanting to overeat. You're going to have enough protein to come in to support and build lean muscle tissue. And then depending on your goal is where you start filling the gaps. Do I want to, am I a hard gainer and I need more glycogen and more carbohydrates to perform? That's typically where you'll add more carbohydrates with your meal. Or if it's, hey, I'm trying to lose some weight, but I got to fill the gap in the calories, you could add healthy oils, healthy fats, avocado. That's another great source to get healthier fats, but get calories into your diet.
So you brought up healthy oils, and currently I'm under the potential propaganda. All seed oils are bad. Use only beef tallow, things like that. How do you feel about that? Is there full validity in like the...
Man, it's I think what's happening is everyone's trying to point out things to stay somewhat relevant in the space. And that's why there's so much information overload and people are getting confused on eat this, not that, take this supplement, don't take that supplement. You know, when you look at the true studies on seed oils and like how much inflammation, like how much you would have to consume or the type, or if it went rancid, I always say you got to live life. Like the seed oils is not making you fat. The seed oil is not creating the problem. It's all the other crap that you're doing. So it's like, once again, now if you're eating healthy and you're watching, you know, the quality of your food and you're keeping, you know, depending on your goal, your calories set where they need to be, you could take it a step further. I do like more, like, you know, I don't purposely try to add seed oils, but seed oils are not the reason why your body's falling apart.
Okay.
So you're not consuming enough of those to create that.
So it's one of those things where it's more about everything else you're doing because it plays such a marginal factor in it.
Yeah. Everyone wants to kind of point the finger at certain things as why they're overweight or why they're not losing fat or why they don't have muscle. And it's like, you know, I've talked, you know, many times on here, and I have for years, is like, make sure your 3 pillars are set. You know, your sleep, which is probably second to nutrition, and then your physical activity. Those are all things like that you need to make sure those are set. You're actually consistent with them before you start trying to like break down the micros, you know, like start splitting hairs on the things that you're already doing. If you're not watching your food and eating healthy, like don't sit there and start splitting hairs on the things like, and that's why most people I think tend to get so overwhelmed with the information. And they're like, screw it. I'm not going to do it. Like, start with the basics. Make sure your nutrition's more whole food. That's going to be a better way to start. Less processed food. Make sure that you're prioritizing your sleep, because that's when our body repairs and fixes the damage we caused during the day. And then physically putting in some work, whether it's strength training or cardiovascular, depends on your goal, but physically moving, staying active, keeping your metabolism working. If you're metabolically okay and you're doing those 3 things, that's where those little things will not make a difference. It really won't.
So like I see it all the time in college where, especially because that's being pushed on social media a lot. So I see it a lot in my generation and at college where people are like, oh, I won't go there because it has seed oils. But next thing you know, they're eating chicken tenders and fries just cooked in beef tallow. Like you're still eating horrible food.
Well, and I always say, like, if you're someone who's already overweight or somebody who already has like a decent amount of body fat and your health markers aren't good, like you need to get the body composition fixed first, before you ever worry about seed oils, or if you're going to get into, once again, I'll tell you to try to stay away from processed foods as much as possible. But yeah, you need to get like your nutrition in check and get your weight in check, because you being obese or overweight is going to create 10 times more problems, or eating sugar all the time and having like uncontrolled blood sugar or type 2 diabetes. That's going to create more inflammation than the little bit of seed oil that you consumed, So
you bring something up, and it's obesity. And I kind of really want to get into this because I've had the argument with people where it's like, obesity runs in my family, or I'm
Nobody
naturally
runs
obese.
in your family.
Exactly, right? So my thing on it is like, a lot of people will be like, oh, it runs in my family, this and that.
Sorry, I had to do it. I'm sorry.
And so my thing with it all is, where does obesity start? Like, where are people getting this idea that it runs in their family, that it's something that they can't control, if you're saying it's just simply calories in, calories out?
So, I mean, you do have, if the previous generations have kind of damaged themselves, right, and metabolically kind of aren't in a good spot, and over time that could play into a lot of the issues with the children, because, obviously you have 2 not so healthy people mating, right? It could, but genetics could be overcome for sure. I think that, once again, that's an easy comp out for a lot of people, is like, oh, it's in my genetics, or it runs in my family, like you just said. Like, it's, I think a lot of it starts with, one, at the parent level, because I have a kid, and so like how you're brought up, and if you're already kind of eating like crap and teaching your kid to eat like crap, you're just reinforcing or assisting them to be in the same position. So that's a good part of it. I think too, just depending on, where people live and, financial poverty, you do, some people just kind of fall into that, just because where they're being brought up. But, Most of it starts coming from the parents on down, you know, and it's the habits they teach their kids. If they let them stay physically active, what type of food are they giving? Are they giving them Twinkies and Ho-Hos, or, you know, are they trying to put some decent quality food, you know, in their kids' mouths so they could feel, function, and perform their best? That's the problem.
So growing up, me and my dad were always very fit. I remember going to a boardwalk with him, the New Jersey boardwalk, and I got a shirt that says 6-pack coming soon, because him and I had a competition who can get a 6-pack first. So I always had that physical, and my dad always ate super clean as a kid. So I always had that good influence.
You had a good foundation.
Very good foundation. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And I'm aware that that's a large contributor to how I am now. But I remember going around when I was a kid to like different sports events, and my dad would be like, dang, like there's a lot of overweight kids. And like when I was growing up, nobody was overweight like this. I'm really interested to see your opinion on why kids are now increasingly becoming more obese.
So, number one, kids are way more sedentary than ever. They're on their devices, they're on their computer. So they're not, I mean, even think about school. I mean, in high school, you had PE class, maybe 1 year that you had to do suffice a PE credit, right? Like when I was in school, we'd have PE class throughout all grades, you know, and it was an hour and you could go out and like, they made you physically get after. You had to run a couple miles, or, you know, it's just just how inactive the population. That's not just kids, it's the world. You know, it's like everything's in front of us, and other things have our attention. Like, you know, I grew up in like Northeast Ohio. Like there wasn't like the minute you know, whether it was summertime, I would leave and I wouldn't come back till night. But I didn't have, I mean, I had some games or electronics, but I really, like, I would go out and play football with the buddies or play basketball at the rec center. You know, like I was so physically active, you know, and I chose to be that way. But kind of like even the kids that didn't choose, you know, would still physically go do stuff because your time wasn't occupied on a screen.
So
you know,
what would be your advice? I mean, obviously the screen time's a huge part of it when it comes to limiting physical activity, time to just prep a meal for your kid or whatever. What would be your advice to the parents to, like, if they see their kids starting to gain a little bit of weight, get a little tummy, whatever, what would be your advice to them?
Kids lead by example for sure. So, you know, start trying to, because most likely if the kid's starting to get overweight, if the parent's not overweight, then you need to start look at what you're giving your kid, right? Or start changing some of the habits that they have. If they're overweight, it's probably going to have to start from the top down, start eating a little bit cleaner, adding more protein, less carbs. Once again, trying to get away from the fast, quick processed foods, which unfortunately a lot of people live that way. But, you know, going back to like, I kind of like was going to say something, you know, like one, you have the lack of inactivity, like in the younger generation across the board and just even now with adults. But I just feel like, I don't want to say it the best way possible without like, I don't want to make anyone mad. You know, I truly feel like also, you know, what they have in the house is probably the biggest contributor. So I would like just the food choices. So there was something else, but I'm going to let that one slide. So
if you could give parents a really quick breakdown of the foods the healthy snacks they should have in the house, what should you do instead of chips? What should you do instead of that cheese sandwich or something like that?
You know, that was the other thing, lack of eating too. That's, you know, a lot of households are so set up to, and the world does this. I've dealt with weight loss forever. Is like they wake up, they have something quick and fast and easy. Sometimes it's a crap bar or some cereal, which is the worst thing to give your kid before the day. But they're busy in their life. So, and then the day goes on, they're working, they're busy, kids, school, whatever, and they don't really eat. And so, and this is just obesity 101, and why most people fall into the trap is life happens. And then all of a sudden later in the day, they haven't ate all day. They're hungry and they're kind of at the effort point hungry where just give me food. I don't care what it is. Willpower goes out the window. So you might've had good intentions to eat something good, but when you're so hungry, forget about it. Right. So I think a lot of them, or they're, you know, if mom, dad are both working a job, they're trying to get back home, you know, let's pick up something quick, fast. We'll grab a pizza. We'll grab fast food. You know, it's just the fast, quick, convenience. So that's kind of the other thing I was going to touch on too, you know, is like the accessible of fast food. And it's not, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy because some people go down that rabbit hole, like they're trying to make us sick and the big food and big pharma are together, right? Like you could still, you're your own person. You can make your own choices. You can eat healthy if you want to eat healthy and not break the bank. So like, that's kind of my stance on that. But I feel like, you know, the food production world is trying to make food faster to just keep up with the population, things that are quick, fast, convenient. And so you have all these extra added things into the food when you're buying processed food or stuff that could stay shelf stable. And so, you know, you're just, the quality of the nutrients you're getting is probably the worst you could pick. So, but it's convenient. So like the world has become to the point where they live off convenience, and convenience is making us lazy. Convenience is making us overweight.
So I think this ties in a lot to convenience and putting life in front of yourself in a way, the same way people would with diets. They do it with sleep as well. I've actually just got a Whoop to start tracking my sleep. I've been doing it for about 2 months now, and I've noticed the difference. As I'm in that number climb, I'm noticing a daily change. My energy goes up. I'm able to make a better choice in my food for the morning. I'm able to get that cup of water in before I drink my coffee. Like my mind's just a little bit more clear. And it's one of your 3 pillars. How important is sleep really? Because I see a lot of kids my age, especially in high school and especially during exam time, we're up all night. So how important is it?
Sleep is, you know, that's what fixes the stress that we dealt with through the day, class, if we worked out, or if we just had, you know, just physical stress in general. You know, when we sleep, our body is able to repair a lot of the damage, the cellular damage while we're sleeping. So over time, lack of sleep, stress goes up, cortisol levels go up. Sometimes it makes it hard for your body to want to use fat. You kind of get in fight or flight. So, you know, sleep outside of like having a healthy diet, when it comes to body composition, is a game changer. Just for everything, for every aspect in your life, all functions, cellular wise, mental clarity, body composition, stress. But and I'm gonna be the first to tell you, like, so many years ago, I'm like, sleep's for the weak or whatever. And, you know, as I was building both companies and, you know, still training and, I was like, I'm killing life, you know, like, and I was sleeping 3 hours a night. And, you know, I didn't realize how detrimental it was. You know, I got a lot of stuff done, but I also look back and I'm like, there was times where I probably didn't put in as good a work as I would have if I would have gotten a little bit more sleep or prioritized my sleep better. Now that I've gotten more wise, you know, I kind of try to make sure like that's kind of kept sacred, and that schedule is pretty consistent. You know, trying to get at least 6 hours. You know, if you get 6 to 8, that's great. Making sure the environment where you sleep, you know, getting the temperature down so your body actually stays asleep. You know, trying to cut stimulants late in the day, which is a tough one. And that was probably my problem for so many years is, you know, I was working so late, and then, you know, you're taking stimulants to try to just work so late. And then over time, your sleep quality was crap. So, you know, I do like the metrics. Whoops are great. They're great ways to, like, they're still metrics and they're tools to kind of gauge. I try not to live or die by my Garmin or my Whoop, or I have an 8 sleep, you know, mattress. But it is good. Like, for the most part, the technology is getting really good, and the metrics are pretty solid. So you could kind of look at like, oh, I didn't sleep so good. What did I do differently, or what didn't I do, and how can I improve that? And so, you know, if you could try to really prioritize sleep, whether you're trying to build muscle, lose fat, you know, just mentally be your sharpest and be able to function through your day, like that's all going to come from sleep. So
I've definitely not, I like to say I live and die by the number on the screen when it comes to my Whoop, but that's not necessarily the case. It really is just like, my recovery went down tonight, or I got less sleep tonight. I went to bed later. What did I do? What was my diet earlier in the day to see, like, did I have sugar late in the day? To that way it would push me to stay awake longer, something like that. I notice when I get like 2 hours of sleep, the next day, and even the next day after that, I am wiped. Like, I just need caffeine all day and just keep going. How how detrimental is it to get that 2 hours of sleep?
I mean, listen, you're going to have points in your life where you got to get stuff done, right? So I'm big into, if you have a weak night when it comes to sleep, you really try to prioritize the next night. I kind of do the same thing with meals. If you have a bad meal, try to fix it with a good meal. So I'm big into like bookending, whether you have a bad meal, you learn to bookend it with good, right? Or if you have a bad night's sleep, make sure you bookend it with a solid night's sleep, and kind of just put a priority to try to at least get to bed on time, cut stimulants out. Sometimes, don't eat really close to bed. There's all kinds of things you could do temperature wise. Actually, the 8 Sleep mattress actually allows you to adjust your temperature per you to do autopilot. Because that was a big one for me, is I'd go to sleep and then I'd wake up in the middle of the night. And then for me, if my mind gets going, I couldn't shut it down. But it was all because my temperature would go up. And then, so this actually helps regulate your body temperature. And so I've definitely noticed since I've had that's been a huge game changer for me. I'm one of those guys that like brown noise, white noise, depending on if you're younger and you're in a dorm room, or if you're living in a house with a bunch of guys, like learning to drown out some of the side noise that could potentially wake you up. But just start trying to really prioritize your sleep schedule, just like you should prioritize your food schedule. If you don't plan out your schedule when it comes to like food, usually you're going to derail and you're going to end up making choices you shouldn't. And it's how important is, your body composition, your metabolic rate, or just overall, just you wanting to look, feel, and perform your best. You're going to need to schedule it and make time for it. So it's the same thing with food. Just try to have it. Like, I have a eating schedule, and I know if I miss it, I learn how to slide it, but at the end of the day, I make sure that I get my numbers in depending on what I'm trying to do.
So I noticed when I take Ibutamoren, I've taken Ibutamoren one other time. I'm currently now just starting another cycle of it. But when I took it, I got really, really good sleep. Like, I was very surprised. It's probably the best sleep I've had in a long time. Why is that?
So, Ibutamoren, or a lot of people know of as MK677, is a growth hormone secretagogue. It actually helps your pituitary make more natural growth hormone. It works through the ghrelin pathway, but that's why a lot of guys typically with Ibutamoren get hungry, sometimes ravenous.
Which is great for me.
For a hard gainer, it's amazing. But, for you, and I think you talked about it, you were actually on the cusp of like being low growth hormone. So I was actually growth hormone deficient as a kid. I didn't catch it till I was in my 20s. And then back then, you really didn't have like Ibutamoren or some even like Semarel and some of the growth hormones, like secretagogues or GHRHs. So I did use synthetic growth hormone for a short period of time. The downside to synthetic is over time you get, insulin resistance. So sometimes you see your blood sugar start creeping up. You get thyroid downregulation. Sometimes you have to supplement T3, T4, or both to supplement the underworking of the thyroid. And then I started getting worried about like, okay, cool. I'm taking growth hormone. It's going to help. I'm going to pick up my IGF-1 insulin growth factor. But that's also where the problem lies. You could potentially push all cell replication, negative cell replication. And I was like, God forbid I give myself cancer, and I think I got a little more smart with that synthetic when, my kid was on the way. But so I that's when I switched over to like growth hormone, peptides and hormones, like Semarelin, which was one of the first line, Ipamorelin, which a lot of people know, or even like Tesamorelin, or you have Ibutamoren, which is kind of a lot more mainstream now. But I as far as like if you were growth hormone deficient or just even a little bit lower than normal, it's helping your body make more growth hormone. So your sleep would get better. You get more REM sleep, you recover, you could build muscle, and just repair on a much faster pace. So kind of I'll talk about like my kid, he was at 12 years old. I got his blood work checked because I was worried about him being growth hormone deficient. He was on the smaller end, bottom 10th percentile. So we did his blood work and he was actually low IGF-1. So I personally didn't want to put him on synthetic growth hormone unless it was an absolute must. Obviously I don't want to leave my kid short, but I also want to do what's necessary. So back then, they'll check, nowadays they'll check with like a high dose Semarelin, which is the growth hormone releasing hormone. And it'll see if the pituitary actually takes a response or makes any more growth hormone. If it doesn't, a lot of time that's the qualifier to see if they could put them on a synthetic growth hormone. So my kid had some response. He wasn't clinically low, but on the low end. So I actually chose to put him on a low dose Ibutamoren, just because he was 12. He's not going to do shots. I didn't want to do shots. And we were able to pick his IGF-1 up with a super low dose, so I kind of gave it a year from 12 to 13. His levels went from like a 60 to like almost like 350. At 13 years old, I put it to an AM PM because our body pulses, the biggest pulse of growth hormone happens at nighttime. And then the second biggest pulse will typically happen in the morning. So I ended up putting him on a low dose both times, got his IGF-1 on like the 450 range. And we picked it up again at 14, and then he's been pretty consistent. He actually turns 15 the 20th. But we were able to take his low deficient growth hormone, put it back to a high normal naturally. So I don't have to worry about, and I kind of forgot to say this, synthetic growth hormone will pick up your IGF-1, but it's kind of like if I give you testosterone right now and your testes are working, your testes are going to stop working. Yep. Same thing with synthetic growth hormone. You could actually cause the pituitary to get lazy, and now you have a lower level if you ever come off than when you started. So that's another big one to keep in mind. Like, don't just go looking for synthetic growth hormone because you could create bigger problems. So, I've kind of been watching that. And then same thing with his testosterone. Usually kids with low growth hormone have lower testosterone levels. So I didn't want to really do anything till he turned like 14. He still stayed on the low end, right around like 400 for his age. That's low. So I was able to have the physician put him on a low dose N-clomiphene, which I've talked about, TBT therapy. He's about 850, 900 now. Oh, so wow. Drastic difference in how he feels, he functions. He's actually wanting to be physically active. He's actually wanting to go to the gym. So, that was something that could potentially make the kid not want to, just worry about their health or stay physically active.
So when you're looking at somebody roughly my age or your kid's age, what would qualify them for you to be like, you should be on Ibutamoren or you should be on a...
So that's a tough one because we don't deal directly with kids, but I do have a lot of parents that have kids that are in that situation. I always tell them to, get with the pediatrician or someone who understands, growth hormone deficiency and get them checked first. Depending on where they're at, if there was no way to fix my son's growth hormone, I would have put him on synthetic growth hormone just to help him be an average height, just because being too small over time could create some problems too. So, but I always say check, get the blood work done, make sure that they're truly deficient, and then you could assist it. But now Ibutamoren really is not like a mainstream therapy for the younger generation, but I will tell you there's studies, actually a couple out and one I think going on right now they haven't completed, talking about using Ibutamoren solely as a growth hormone benefit to kids. Really? Much safer alternative, much safer option. So I would like to see something like that maybe go a little bit more mainstream to just regular healthcare, regular physicians. But most of the time, unless you're going to like a hormone specialist that's not doing anything through insurance, probably not going to.
I feel like Ibutamoren is one of those things that's like a secret that like people are kind of scared of, but it works really, really well.
And I'll say this is probably and I've talked to you guys about this, probably one of the safer ones to do. It's kind of just don't go buying whatever though. Cause you don't want to just throw anything in your body. There's so much crap on the market just in the supplement world now. But from a safety profile, probably one of the safer things you could do, and try to help your body do what it should be doing.
And how important is sourcing? Because I heard this, and I don't want to say the person who told me this, but I heard that, if you went to like a supplement store and you got Ibutamoren MK677, there could be other things in there that they're just not listing to keep you hooked, give you good results. And then...
Well, so that's the thing with the supplement world. It's not really regulated like it should be. So you do have some companies, and this is old school. Back in the day, there were certain products that came to the market that were pretty much probably one molecule off of a steroid, and they worked. I actually probably took some of them, Andrew Standione, because I was, at an early age, I'm pretty open about it. I started getting into the gym I think it was like 12, 13. I kind of had some of the older guys in the gym that I kind of looked up to, and I was reading all the Flex magazines and, Muscle Media back then, which I don't think is around anymore. But You know, I always had like a passion for like, I just thought the human body was fascinating and how you can choose to change the way you look per your food, your physical activity, and obviously sleep. Right. So that was like always like fascinating to me. And then take it a step further, certain supplements, creatine, you know, pro hormones back then. Obviously during that time, you know, you had the Barry Bonds, Mark McGuire, like everybody was like, get the androstenedione. But the problem is some of those, if you start taking the workload off the testes at an early age, you create a deficiency early. And I went through that. Like I did take pro hormones in high school, which kind of, I would say that started the slippery slope for me. You know, it's like I started at 16 with a pro hormone, got results, came off, felt like crap, went back on pro hormones. And then it kind of progressed to where like, you know, and I had a lot of friends that were 4 years older than me. You know, I was kind of in the gym world. It's like, here, take some Sustanon, you know, you'll get better results. And I did. I went down that path because I was looking for the next best or biggest thing without really kind of thinking about the long-term effects. So, you know, fast forward to 22 years old, my testosterone level is 17, you know, and I'm like, all right, like something I got to fix this. And, you know, there wasn't really many mainstream hormone replacement clinics. So that's, I kind of went and fixed myself and then eventually progressed into helping other people fix their levels. And that's part of why I think, you know, this podcast hits home for me is because I'm big into do as I say, not as I did. Like, you know, I've made the mistakes, and if I could avoid the younger generation from making the same mistakes, you know.
If you have, I mean, this is kind of like a crazy question, but if you had somebody who was just like you when you were 16 years old, oh, I'm itching to go take something, I really want to take something, what would you recommend for them to take as safely as they can, or even just be like, wait? What would you say?
Before you go to a supplement or before you go to a peptide or before you go into even something further, like food is a drug. It truly can be a drug. And so get your food, make sure you're hitting your numbers depending on your goal, like really hone in to understand nutrition and what your body needs to be able to get the results. Once again, the other pillar, sleep, and obviously put in the work at the gym. Like, you know, start there and max out your genetic potential as much as you can before you consider, like there's other things that I consider healthy, like creatine, great, fine. If you're hydrating, it's even got so many benefits now that everyone's starting to talk about. You know, I've always kind of used it and had it, and it helps with ATP transport, which is the food that our cells of the body eat. So, you know, creatine's a great one, all ages, as long as you're staying hydrated. You know, as far as like stepping over the line, you know, Ibutamoren is something I can't tell you to do it, but you know, that's something that would have a little bit better safety risk profile that I wouldn't be concerned about. But start with the basics first. Too many people want to step over the basics, just go straight to the thing, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I first started creatine, because I was too young to buy it on my own. I was like, Dad, I really want to start creatine. I've been reading a lot about it. It's super safe. There's a bunch of studies on it. And he's like, I don't know about that. Maybe you should stick to protein powder. And I'm like, no, seriously, I really, really want to try it. Come a couple of years later, I mean, he ended up buying it for me then. And come a couple of years later, now you have all of these studies that are coming out, cognitive benefits, this and that. But I remember one of the biggest pushbacks was hair loss. So really quickly, can you kind of weigh out the pros and cons of creatine?
I mean, there's really no risk. As you know, one of the big ones is as long as you're hydrating, because it's going to help hydrate, right? Your muscles are 77% water. I mean, shoot, in muscle, you know, and steak and meat, you're going to get a good amount of creatine in there as well. So, you know, creatine's safety risk profile is good. Now, if you're somebody who's like maybe wrestling and you're dehydrated, like I wouldn't use it, right? So like it's all, if you're hydrating like you should be, adding electrolytes, super safe.
What?
You don't need to load it. You don't need to, you know, do like a loading phase and, you know, 5 to 10, you know, grams per day is plenty. I definitely, if you're younger, I would throw at least 5 grams intra workout. Personally, I would go 5 pre or intra and 5 post. Will probably get you the best results. You know, somebody who's older, I talk to them, like try to have 5 during your workout and 5. I usually put in a nighttime like drink concoction that I do.
Okay. So what would be the biggest issue? Like if I didn't drink or hydrate properly on creatine?
I would say just anybody who has like renal insufficiency or they're dehydrated and the kidneys are stressed. But I mean, that's an easy fix. So, just make sure you're hydrating, trying to get at least 2 liters of water per day. I'm a huge fan of adding electrolytes into your fluid. There's all kinds of products out there you can add, Noon tabs. Just make sure that you have enough electrolytes so you absorb and you actually hydrate.
Now, with dehydration, I do want to bring up drinking.
Yep.
Because a lot of people around me work out, drink, partying. We're in college. We're having fun. You brought up something really interesting to me that I never really thought about until you said it, which was the day after you drink, if you go work out, like you're setting yourself up for failure. And I kind of want to let you go into it, but why is it that when you drink and then go work out, it's a no-go?
Well, a lot of it's going to stem from dehydration first, So when you drink, basically alcohol inhibits aldosterone in our body, which is kind of like our governor that maintains water balance. And so a lot of times, you'll inhibit aldosterone and so you'll freely pee. That's the same thing. Like when you drink alcohol or if you take a diuretic, your body will start excreting fluid pretty quick. Like you notice after 1 beer or 1 shot, you're starting to pee. And once you kind of open up the gate, you're going, right? And so you end up dehydrating, you're flushing, electrolytes and minerals out of the system. So one, mild dehydration can make a big difference in your performance, cognitive function. So let's not even talk like what else could potentially happen, but just the dehydration aspect of going and doing something strenuous weight training wise, you're kind of handicapped, not to mention the liver's not working like it should. 1 drink takes, 6 to 8 hours for your liver to break it down and process it through the system. If you're someone trying to lose weight, good luck trying to lose weight when you have alcohol in the system, because it's kind of all of a sudden you put fat loss on the back burner for a certain period of time. And then not to mention dehydration or getting a hangover, right? Mm-hmm. You tend to feel like crap and then you eat like crap. And then so most people don't really try to train afterwards, but I would say for the days after, making sure that you rehydrate. So at least the environment's good. Mm-hmm. So I kind of, when I was younger and I used to kind of have fun on the weekends, I would go out and, whether it be a Friday, Saturday, sometimes a Sunday at the beach, I would drink and then, usually I would try to rehydrate back and then on Monday go to the gym. And so, 1 year I actually was in the gym training normal, didn't think anything of it. On my last set, I ended up having a partial pec tear. So I was kind of like, well, that's weird, but maybe it was just, I had a defect or deficiency and it was going to happen anyways, but it was never an insertion point tear. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, like the next year, I ended up having a TFL quad tear on a Monday. And then I just thought it was random. It was Monday because depending on my schedule, it would rotate. And then shortly after that, after a weekend of drinking on a Monday, I ended up having a partial calf tear. And then, like I said, none of them were insertion points. But think about it. If you're dehydrating your muscle, your body just in general, and your muscle, once the muscle gets dehydrated, it's kind of like dried beef jerky. Mm-hmm. And it's more susceptible to micro tears. And, as I look back at those Mondays and the previous days prior to those Mondays, I was dehydrated. And so, I trained in a dehydrated state, dehydrated muscle. And so that's most likely was the cause of the tear. So it's, one of those things, if you're going to drink, learn to do it in moderation. Number 2, make sure you hydrate back as much as you can, whether you hydrate that night when you're going to bed, hydrate the next day, add electrolytes in. Mm-hmm. And I would say try to have a good rehydration day back before you actually physically go in and try to crush a workout.
So if you're one of those people similar to me, if I go do something like drinking, the next day I feel like I have to go do something every day. Yeah. I have to go run, I have to go do jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, or lift, something like that. What would be your recommendation to that person? So
I wouldn't do any physical strength training, or if you're going to train, you're not going to try to hit PRs. You're not going to push the muscle to the max. So I like more like maybe you go take a walk or you walk, jog, or you run, or you swim. Just something that's not going to really tax your muscle to the limits to where something like that could happen. And then, like I said, take that next day to truly rehydrate back your system so you could get all cylinders firing so you're not working at a deficiency going into your week. But I don't like, I said physically go and do some weights, fine, but you might just go through the motions, just move the muscles. Don't try to sit there and hit PR numbers, and I was going for, I think I was training like 8 to 12 reps at that time. And it happened like on, my last set on the fourth rep in, fourth, fifth rep in on all of them. So yeah, just train smart. Make sure you hydrate back, train smart. Don't do anything to the max, at least the day after drinking, because you could be susceptible to having a micro tear or injury.
So this is kind of like the final thing I want to touch up on here. And it has a lot to do with weight training and cardio. I see a lot of people when they try to lose weight, it's all cardio. But I heard from actually Bradley Martin, when he tries to cut and he's going on for shows or whatever, what he'll do is he'll lower his diet first, no cardio, just weight training. Then once he gets to the point of like a plateau, then he'll start adding the cardio in. So I kind of want to know, what is your strategy as far as losing weight, gaining weight? How should you train?
Yeah. So, that's obviously, I wish that was a easy, simple, I have the answer, because it all depends on the person, the goal, where they're at. When it comes to dieting for something, you're only going to be as good as what you did in your off time. So how well did you build your metabolism? How much food are you consuming? And then how much cardiovascular work are you doing? So I always try to use the analogy is I like people to kind of, when they're trying to go in their grow mode, right? They might do less cardio, maybe just some HIIT cardio, but the goal is to get it to where their food consumption's high while keeping body composition good, their metabolic rate's good, and their cardio is super low. And so a lot of times, and I'll tell you, the world does this, I'm going to go get shredded or I'm going to go on a weight loss plan. They drop their food and they pick up their activity. And it works initially. You're going to see some crazy results within the first 2 weeks, and then eventually get stuck. And your body actually adapts to the stimulus of the training and to the amount of cardio that you're doing or the lack of food that you have. And dieting over time will slow our metabolism down. So now it's like, all right, cool. I'm stuck. Like he waited till he got stuck. I'm stuck. All right, well, what do I do? Well, I could add more cardio, but I'm already doing a lot, or I could add more physical activity, but I'm already doing a lot. And I could drop food, but my food's pretty much at the rock bottom. And so people make a bigger deficit or add more work, and then you eventually work against your system. And a lot of times if you're putting too much work and not enough food, they start losing that hard-earned muscle that they put on. So the goal would be to start with your food high, your cardio low, small deficit from food, you get stuck. You could add a little bit of cardio and you get stuck, make a small deficit in your food, get stuck. And you only make the adjustments. I always say it's kind of like we're playing war. Okay. And I could actually see my cards, right? And so I'm pulling my cards out. Whenever I need them, I'm going to pull that card out and use it. So I'm able to drop a little food if I have to. Not a lot of food, just a little bit to create a deficit. Add a little cardio. And so you kind of end up where your cardio is at a moderate amount, your physical training's at a moderate amount, your food's good to support it. And everything's a lot more balanced. That's probably the biggest mistake I think a lot of people make going into the dieting side, whether it's weight loss or trying to get ready for a show. So, one, work to get to where your metabolism's good and you have a good amount of food. And then cardiovascular, I would say just add it as you need it. I'm a big fan of high intensity interval cardio. I could have you do, go walk on the treadmill for 25 minutes and you'll get a 2-hour afterburn. You'll burn some calories. I could have you do 5 minutes of like a high intensity interval, 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds slow after you trained. And I'm big into let it complement your workout. Say you did shoulders, you might do battle ropes, or if you did back, you might get on the C2 rower, but do 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds stagnant. High intensity interval cardio will allow you to pick up your metabolic rate, maintain muscle because you're never staying too high, too hard for too long. And so you're able to get almost an 18 to 20 hour afterburn. You'll notice if I had you do 5 minutes of HIIT versus your 20 minutes of a walk, you'll notice your temperature through the day, later in the day, is much higher because you got a metabolic increase. So when I'm trying to build people's metabolisms, I could build them better, one, through slowly picking their food up or food frequency, but you could also do it through adding high intensity intervals to try to pick their metabolism out of the dirt.
Interesting. I feel like that's the opposite of what everything you said is almost the opposite of what everybody else thinks. I'll talk to my grandparents, my mom. My dad's a little different because he is very much so into fitness. But like, for example, my mom will come to me like, oh, Kyle, I want to lose weight, this and that. And I'm like, just start walking. Just don't change your diet. Just go out and walk a day. Like just once a day, go for a mile. You will start to see progress because you're adding more than what you're doing now. Now, I just don't get why we have this idea where like you have to just do it in an extreme, like, oh, I'll drop all your food.
That's the world we live, right? So it's not, people can't do things in moderation. Either they overeat in they overeat, or they do too much gaming, or they do we're just in a world of like, I want it now and I want it fast, and that quick gratification. Whereas like, I'm big into try to work with your system, not against your system. And far too many people, and what I'm saying is not rocket science. This stuff's out there. Like people have the information. It's just, I think a lot of people want it faster than what they're getting it. And a lot of times that's short lived, and they work against themselves. They shoot themselves in the foot.
I've seen this a lot because it's the new big thing now. Everybody's talking about it. It is the quick fix, Ozempic.
Yep.
And I just saw Nick Jonah. Shout out to him. He just lost a ton of weight, but it looks unhealthy. There is no muscle. In fact, it actually looks like if he had any, he lost it. How dangerous is Ozempic? Like, what are people not seeing with it?
So the problem with that is the application's flawed. And once again, you have people using it the wrong way, right? They want to lose a lot of weight. The way it's scaled, I feel like the world should know that it should be scaled to the person, not to the masses. By itself, I think the GLPs are probably one of the most remarkable things I've seen in the weight loss world, or even in the fitness world. There's an application, but it improves how your pancreas works. It improves the B cells in the pancreas. Basically, if carbs come in, my pancreas releases insulin to take it to get used as energy. Obviously, if I get insulin resistant, sometimes it doesn't put out enough, and that, basically carb or sugar circulates and sugar builds up, which is insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. So it was meant to kind of improve how the pancreas works, improves carbohydrate metabolism, A1C, blood sugar, which, a lot of people, if they're eating too many carbs, it helps correct insulin resistance. You could do that through low carb dieting as well. But, I feel like the way it's been put to the market, you have these people not feeling good. The big one is they're not hungry by the way that they're dosing. And so unfortunately, we're looking at these cases where you're like, well, they did Ozempic and look how bad they look. It's not so much the Ozempic or the Wegovy or the Mounjaro. It's what they're doing from it. They're using this. They're starving the weight off. This is starvation 101. I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat. I'm going to lose a crap ton of weight. And you do initially, obviously, let's look at this. We got, 5 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of muscle. If you're losing, like starving the weight off, you're going to lose this. This is our metabolism. This is basically our metabolic currency, and the muscle sitting requires calories. Fat provides 3,500 calories per pound as energy. So, if you drop your food too low and you don't eat enough to support this, when you're trying to lose your fat, you end up losing majority of this. Your metabolism gets super, super low. And now you're stuck with this. And now where are you going to go from there? So you're getting a lot of people ended up skinny fat. It's kind of like my best analogy is like they've lost a lot of weight, but they lost majority of the muscle, and it's just mostly fat left on their system. And ultimately those people are either going to have to not eat to not gain weight, or they would hopefully be smart about it and reverse back out. But they got a big hill to climb to pick their metabolism back up through food frequency, through physical activity, high intensity intervals. I'm seeing it. I have so many clients coming in that have been on these GLPs elsewhere, and they're metabolically damaged. And so now we're having to try to fix it through some of the stuff that I said. But I think a lot of people need to be smart prior to going down that path. I think they're great to give you, if you're someone struggling with discipline or willpower, to actually adhere to a plan. The vehicle is the food. Nothing will ever supersede that. How you diet, how you lose your weight is ultimately going to probably dictate what happens afterwards, right? So you just got to be a little more smart about it. It's not the Ozempic or Wegovy. I think it's a great way to create some discipline, like diet discipline. But outside of that, have a solid plan, because at the end of the day, the vehicle's the food, the physical activity, the sleep, the foundation. Make sure your foundation is set. And then if you apply it right, amazing.
So it sounds like the poison is mostly in the portion. And then following that, as long as you can get your 3 pillars in there, you'll be okay. So Ozempic isn't this like you should be scared of it or like you should fully go do it. Look at how much portion you should take of it. Make sure your diet's in check, your physical activity.
Try to fix those 3 things first. And then if you're still struggling, okay, or you're struggling to adhere to the plan, that it might be okay for you. Then going into the application of it is like have someone that's going to basically guide you per you, not just the masses, the scaling, that's basically set for diabetes. So, just nothing will ever supersede a bad diet. Like, so you got to focus on the food, unfortunately. And that's the thing that most people don't want to do. They don't want to think about it. It takes the most discipline, the most willpower, the most effort, but it's also the thing that gives you the biggest ROI, the thing that can drastically change your health if you do it right.
So if you were to give somebody who was going to take Ozempic 3 pieces of advice to change their diet before they went on it, hey, do these 3 things before you go on it, specifically with your diet, what would those 3 things be?
Meal frequency, try to minimum eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In a perfect world, I like breakfast, small snack, lunch, small snack, dinner, which is going to prevent you from overeating at other points in the day. Prioritize protein at each one of at least your main meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you put them in the snacks, even better. Protein makes you feel full and satiated. Plus, it's going to keep the muscle as we drop, so we could drop fat. We don't want to lose weight. We don't want to end up skinny fat. We want to lose fat. So, prioritizing protein, eating small, frequent meals, and starting to get a little bit physically active, and then take it in baby steps. Make 1 or 2 changes and ride it out until you're stuck. And then you learn to, maybe you got to adjust your food, or you be a little bit better with your food, or, hey, I got to be a little bit more physically active. I'm going to go from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. But just do them in small increments and obviously save some cards to be able to throw out, and you'll be able to get to where you need to be.
Awesome. So quick recap of everything. You should take creatine. Ibutamoren goes by person.
Yep.
If you're living in college and you want to eat cheap, fast food is not your only solution. And sleep is very, very important. Am I missing anything, Jeff?
No, I think, end of the day, I think we kept circling back around to diet, sleep, and, physical activity. Get your pillars set right, especially if you're looking at Ibutamoren, and just plan. Try to get a schedule. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So it's like once you could see what you do, whether it's your time management, your food, or your strength training plan, like once you know where you've been, you know what to adjust to move forward.
And then if you had one piece of advice to give to my generation, young kids who want to be healthy, go chase that fit lifestyle, and honestly look like you, what would that piece of advice be?
Try not to take the shortcut first. Don't reach for the thing that might give you quick results. Definitely not hormones if you're not at that point. Like I've been there, done that. I've fixed a lot of that. So just try not to take the quick fix, and then just be a sniper in what you choose after your food, your sleep, and your nutrition set.
Thank you so much for answering all my questions, Jeff. If you guys want to go find me, my name is Kyle Woessner, KyleWoessner on Instagram, YouTube, whatever else. The next episode, please stay tuned, go watch. If you like this episode, subscribe, hit the bell below, leave a comment what you guys want to see next, and we'll see you guys next time.
Peace.